Hi, everyone, and welcome to Resource Revolution, the resource management podcast. I'm your host, Christine Robinson, and on this podcast, we will discuss the real life experiences of people in and around the world of resource management. Today, we have Casey Hawkins joining us. Casey is the Director of Execution Operations at Embark. Welcome, Casey.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course, we are so excited to get into this conversation today. If anyone knows me, knows I am the biggest fan of resource management and resource managers. So when I met you, I was keen to get into a little bit of your background and get to know you a bit more. So as a little bit of background here, Casey actually started his career in a big four accounting firm within the audit and assurance space. He then transitioned to Embark in 2017 as a consultant and has been leading the resource management function since 2021. Casey has an accounting degree from Stephen S. Austin State University and is also a CPA. So, Casey, tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the world of resource management. It seems like you've been able to build upon your experience over time.
Yeah. So I kind of fell into it. Luckily, fell into it, and like you said, started in on the audit side at a big four firm, and um, kind of wanted to get into the more consulting side. So moved over to Embark, and realized I loved Embark and wanted to be there long term, but the client facing side of things wasn't going to be in my long term goal, and so made it known to whoever would listen at the firm that, hey, I want to stick around wherever I can fit in. That's where I want to be in the back office support side. And so 3 years into that, I kind of got a call and said, hey, we're looking at implementing a PSA, and we could use extra hands as well as extra hands on a number of different things. And so made that transition at that point, stepped into that role, and it's evolved a good bit over that time. But now we're leading a team of about seven folks on our
Wow.
resource management function, and it's been a great journey. Learned a lot, got to see a ton throughout our firm, and just working with good technology partners and different things like that. So it's been awesome.
That's fantastic, and it's interesting. I think one of the things that you noted was you were vocal about wanting to kind of make a transition and kind of putting yourself out there. Do you think that that was helpful, necessary? What's your take on that in terms of a next step from a career path perspective?
Yeah, I had a guy in college who was I worked with for a college job, and he always said, "Closed mouths don't get fed," and so
Mm,
you got to speak up. And if you're not making your needs known, no one's going to come in. A great manager would come and ask you and want to chase that down, but you're more likely to get what you need when you're speaking up for yourself. And so yeah, absolutely. I have a big proponent of that. Tell my team that all the time. Hey guys, if you want to see something, do something, speak up. It might not be immediate, and it wasn't for me. So I probably said that to to firm leadership about a year into my tenure at Embark, and so did consulting for 2 more years after that. And I just knew I needed to be patient and wait for the right thing to come along, and when it did, I jumped on it. And so
that's
it's
awesome.
about it's just about kind of trying to see what you want to do. It's not easy, and like I think especially at a firm like Embark, where when I joined, there were less than 20 people, and now we're at about a firm of about 750 folks. When you're a firm of 15 people, there are going to be roles every single year that didn't exist the year before, and as functions spin up and these new jobs come to fruition, it's you have to be willing and able to see them and jump on them and be willing to take that risk. And so, and it's paid off for me. And so, yeah, it's been really rewarding.
Definitely. And it's interesting to hear you not only describe how you really created the impetus for that foundation for yourself, right? To be able to step into that role. It's not like someone said, "Hey, we have this resource management career path and this is step 1, this is step 2." You had to kind of put yourself out there, it sounds like, and I'm thinking about my own experience, but also the
Mm.
experience of others that I know within this space who have taken on leadership roles. And I'm certainly seeing a trend there, right? So that ability to speak up and kind of advocate for your own ambitions and interests is key. But the other thing that I heard you say is also this flexibility. Is that accurate? It seems like you were it's not that you necessarily said, "Hey, I'm looking for a resource management role," but you were kind of open to what was going to come your way, if
Oh,
I'm
for sure.
understanding correctly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And when the role came, it wasn't purely a resource management role. Like, I think we talked about this previously, but we when I stepped into this, I think when I took the role, it was the title was operations, and that was it.
Mm,
It wasn't like manager. It was just operations. And so at the time, I was our IT department. I was our facilities manager. And then resource management as well was a component of that. And then as we've grown and scaled as a company, one person or one team cannot do all of those things, right? And so I got to pick and choose a little bit on what I was more passionate about, what I wanted to do long term, and I come to find out that was the resource management side of it. And so,
mm.
um, yeah, it's definitely about flexibility. I think, especially in a kind of a startup and a rapid growth environment of, hey, it's kind of all hands on deck. Everybody does everything. You're not too good to do anything. Pick up the trash, stock the snacks. We absolutely did all those things, and so it's just about filling the need when you see it, and then I think once you do that, you get you build your reputation or get some of that relational equity and say, hey, I've shown my willingness and my ability to do these things. This is the piece that I really want to do and I'm passionate about. And at that point, it was, yeah, absolutely go do that, chase it. And so, um, yeah,
That is fantastic, and I think really great advice for people that are really starting out within this field that is not it hasn't existed formally, right, for very long. It certainly has existed for many years and certainly in different industries, but not maybe called resource management. So I think what you said was interesting for a number of reasons. One of the things that I've also noticed and that I heard you say is this idea that resource management sometimes it it grows and develops kind of organically, right? So it's not necessarily that it was the second out of two functions within the starting phase of an organization. Can you share a little bit about how within your experience you saw the need for resource management arise? Did someone wake up one morning and said, "Hey, there's this thing and we need this"? Were you part of that evolution? Where did that come from?
yeah. So 6 years ago, our CEO was doing our resource management. Our current CEO was doing resource management. He was, I, it's hard to, titles change so quickly that it's hard to remember at the time but I think he was our, maybe just the president or the head of execution at the time. But as a firm of 20 people, he was doing all the scheduling, all the resource management. And obviously, as the firm grew past 20 people to 100 to 200 and kept doubling and doubling, uh, the need arose that one person could not do that, and much less one person who is trying to lead the company, right? And so it was very organic. I think I stand on the shoulders of the people who come before me, the CEO, and then we had another um, person in a similar seat as I am now. She's moved on to a chief of staff role at Embark for our C team, and so she grew it to a certain point. And when she moved up and out, I stepped over and helped grow the team to where it is today. I think when she stepped out, it was me, her, and one other doing resource management and still doing the IT stuff and still doing all those what we call side hustles within Embark. And then eventually got to the point where we're a standalone function with a seat at the table, helping make strategic decisions, a team of 7 and growing. And so, yeah, it's organic growth as things grew as with the firm. Um, but it's been intentional as well, where it's, hey, now that we're at a place where we have dedicated sets of eyes and hands doing the function, we can start building out, hey, this is what one the function needs to do to grow and scale with the firm, but also what our people within the function need to do to grow and scale in their career. uh, as they move up. And I, I say this all the time. We've had a number of people start in our function, in the resource management function at Embark, and then move on into other places within the firm. And it's such a great, I think it's a great landing spot, but also a great starting point for a career because you get to learn so much about the company you're in from that seat. We sit centrally between, in our case, between sales and execution and talent and hiring and all those different key pieces of the firm that we get to see and hear so much and learn how things function. And you're implementing systems and building processes that skill set can be overlaid into a number of different things. And so I've seen that firsthand where people have taken what they've learned on our team and gone on and built a new function or gone into a more leadership role. And so it's been really, really cool and rewarding to see that. And then also help build out the kind of the growth plan for individuals within the function.
Absolutely. And that's what that's what you want to hear, right?
Yeah.
This is the ideal vision, right, for what a career that is enriching and providing value would look like. I'm hearing your enthusiasm and passion for the role. I'm curious, when did you realize that that could be found within resource management? Because as we talked about, it's not that you were hired, right, to do this function. It's something that kind of came about. And I also heard you say that you probably could have taken potentially another path, right? There were other things that you were getting involved with and engaging in, and you kind of settled, within this spot. At that time, was it kind of a fluke? You just kind of randomly picked it, or did you start to realize the potential that resource management had? Because it's interesting as others are finding themselves in a position to start, I would say, dabbling in the RM space, especially within organizations that are either startups or potentially growing an RM function. I think a lot of them are having that internal dialogue of what is resource management? And I keep
Mhm.
hearing about schedules and I keep hearing about staffing, but I'm not really sure what that means. And then you hear people like Christine Robinson's running around saying, "Hey, it's really interesting and you get to be part of the internal strategy of the organization." It's like, well, what does that have to do with scheduling? So I'm curious your perspective on that.
Yeah, no, I think it was a couple of different factors. One, it was I genuinely enjoy the work. I think the solving of the puzzle for the day to day. Hey, who fits this? We don't have someone who can do this. Let's go solve it. I think I love that piece of it. So that's awesome. I get to do less of that now, just as we grow and I'm more in a sitting in that leadership role. But um, I think too, the second a big piece of it was I just saw a more defined future in it, and so I think sitting in a professional services firm, the need for the function is only, to me, only growing. And so we're there when you have limited resources and you're trying to perform excellent work at a client. The strategy that goes into, excuse me, making those decisions on staffing and where to most effectively allocate resources is huge. And so, um, and then the idea of being key in decisions on systems and processes um, is also something I wanted to be a part of and something I saw in the future of this resource management function. So,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that, right? Because the growth of not only your own career path, right, but the team around you and that doesn't happen without, I would say, probably two things, right? There's the support that you have internally, but you gain that support by doing good work, and then doing good work gains you more support, right? So it's sort of this self-fulfilling very good prophecy, right, in a way
mhm.
that's positive. That is that is really interesting, and I think one of the things that struck me about what you described is it sounds like you have to be somewhat open-minded, right? To be able to go into something that you don't really know. You're kind of opening this door and you don't know what's on the other side, but that's part of maybe what led you, it sounds like, into to kind of exploring this. But the connection that I'm making too is resource managers themselves sometimes it's hard. I know for myself, sometimes being in a position, growing my own team and hiring resource managers, it's like, what are
Mhm.
you looking for? And it's hard because, again, it's not a super formally recognized function necessarily, especially in some other industries where perhaps the attributes that you need to be successful in resource management are not they're not that clear, or they're not necessarily, there's not a job description, right, that you can just kind of look at and pull that out, specifically. So I'm curious, as you talked about liking to solve a puzzle, right? I think back to my own experience, and when I was doing staffing, part of the, I would say, excitement for me, which might be not exciting and maybe terrifying for others, is I almost liked it when there was something that was not quite right, right? Because it's like, okay, this, now I have this chance to put it together, or come up with this creative solution. And I wonder if that perspective is the same quality that drives someone to pursue a career that they might not exactly know, right, where that's going to land. So, what do you would you agree with that? Does that resonate?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that it's that, and then I think the ability or in the view of being able to build something out of nothing and solve those problems while doing it is a big part of it. I think on the idea of building a team and finding the people and the right skill sets, and the comment of hiring an RM, we've never hired a previous RM. Like we've hired people into an RM role
Mhm.
who have never done that before, including myself. Uh, I think the biggest thing that we've realized as we've gone through that is just finding the people who can fit into the team dynamic that we're building. And then we can train them on the RM stuff. I think it's a skill set for sure, but it can be learned. And it's we're looking for people who have that open mind to say, "Hey, I want to learn. I want to take on the challenge." Part of it is there is sometimes it's black and white, and there's a right answer. A lot of times it's in that gray area, and so we have to find folks who can live in that gray area. Um, but they don't. That doesn't mean they if they are naturally wired towards the black and white that they can't do it. I think we have folks on the team who sit on either end of that spectrum where they want the rules, they want it right, they want it either it's a yes or a no, or the people on the other end who they can go either way, like they don't really care. That it doesn't matter. Like they'll find the right answer, whatever. If it's in the middle somewhere, that's great. Um, I think it's really to us the biggest piece is, hey, are you willing to help teammates, learn from teammates? It's take know when to take a stand on things and say, this is where I draw my hard line. This is a battle not worth fighting. Because they're it's not battles, like it's all internal, so we're all on the same team, but at the same time, again, it's whenever you have limited resources and you have people competing for those resources, even internally, there's going to be conflict. And so that's with our sales staff, with consultants who want to do certain types of work. There's only that certain amount of those projects. A lot of times, as a resource manager, you're playing mediator, middleman, and um, I get energized from that. That's the stuff that I like. I like the people. Hey, let's sit down and talk through this. Come to a good solution. I know a lot of people are drained by that. But that's the stuff that I think if you love that, RM is perfect place for you. If you
Yeah.
don't, that doesn't mean it can't work. Like I said, I think we have people on our team who that's not what they want to do. They get more energy from the process side, and there's room for that too. I think you need both of those people within that function to get get it to where you need it to be. There's so much that goes into it on both ends of that spectrum that without people on both sides, I think you're not reaching your full potential as a resource manager.
I hear you on that, and that really resonates, not only with my own experience and kind of being out in the fields and seeing that myself, but I think that's also quite frankly, the part that makes it challenging to find resource managers because that's hard to describe, it's hard to pinpoint, and it's really hard to identify that in an interview.
Yeah.
Is that would be my perspective on that because you're almost looking for an ability to flex pretty seamlessly between being analytical and
Hmm.
being able to establish good relationships, be able to draw on the the right parts of a conversation to focus on and having to navigate what can be very
Yeah.
challenging conversations and negotiations. Some might say, depending on what's going on. So it is interesting, and I agree with your perspective on hiring people that might not necessarily have done this before is I'm going to venture to say super common in this industry. Maybe it won't be in 20 years from now when this has been around a lot longer, but I do think that it is certainly evolving. There are a number of different stages within a potential career path for a resource manager, right? So in some organizations, very, very formal, has been around for years, process has been established, and their focus is, my guess would be on refining and executing on that process. We've got others where resource management is just starting within a company and
Yeah.
they're having to build the resource management function. It certainly sounds like this is what you've experienced. And part of that, my guess, is educating others on what resource management is as well. And so one of the things that you said was this kind of interesting um almost trigger, this catalyst for how resource management started within your career. There was it sounds like a switching of a technology tool that the organization was investing in. It also certainly sounds like there was a lot of growth that took place. I'm wondering if the combination of those things, do you feel like that helped launch the platform for resource management to succeed? And are those things that you would suggest that others could maybe look for within their organizations of, hey, maybe this is a good time to start resource management here, is maybe this is something that we could benefit from?
Yeah. No, I think there's a number of factors that went into it for us. I think, like I mentioned previously, we obviously had a good foundation with our now CEO being our de facto resource manager at one time, and so he understood the need for it and how important it is, and also how difficult it is. Truly, so he's always got it. He gets it now. We have immense support from him and from leadership just based on that. So that standalone is great.
That's huge.
But to your point, yeah, like the kind of that investment from a hey, we were on a system that was we had we had outgrown from a scheduling standpoint. Hey, we're about to go invest in this new PSA software. So we need to get serious about resource management if we're going to make that investment. So that was another kind of catalyst around it. Hey, if we're going to put investment into it from a technology standpoint, we should build some structure around it. And then the third, I think we just got to a point as a firm size wise where uh, we had to get rid of those side hustles that I mentioned earlier. Like you couldn't do both. Like your divided attentions were taking away from both things, and so it's a need at that point of a kind of a season of focus. And so when we got there, we're on the other end of it now, where I got to see from the point of it coming from nothing to a certain point, getting put into that where CEO and now chief of staff had started building the function and coming into it and helping be a part of it. And then now we're on the point where now we're on the other end where we're refining and we're putting process and putting career expectations and leveling and different things like that, where before it was we were all doing functions, we were all kind of just a, a group trying to succeed in a goal, and now we're hey, this is a team, here's our team structure, here's your expectations as a what we'd call it a coordinator role or a senior coordinator, and this is how you get to the manager level and what it takes to do that. And we have review process around it. We're trying trying not to make it red tapey, but trying to make it, hey, I think everybody wants to know, how am I performing? What do I need to do to get to the next level? And that's what we have a lot of focus right now about making, getting to that point, building that out. And so that our folks, as we bring them on, they know that to get to X level, this is what it takes. And I think up until this point, we just hadn't had that. And part of that is a function of being a hyper growth new startup company where, like I said, the role that exists tomorrow didn't exist today, and the whole department that exists tomorrow probably didn't exist today either. So
Yeah.
we're kind of, we've, as a firm, we're talking about, hey, we're in our teenage years, we're growing up, it's time to put our big boy pants on and get to work on some of that more mature function. And so we're doing that within the resource management function as well.
That's awesome, and in addition to clearly that being, of course, very positive for the team and the organization, I would venture to say that it's also a huge win for the industry, the profession of resource management, because that is a huge detractor and challenge for people in this space, is not necessarily seeing a career path. And it's so unfortunate when that happens because, to your point, there are so many very, very rewarding parts of this field. And if you find yourself with the opportunity to work within RM, I couldn't agree more. There are so many very strategic and exciting things that you get to work on and see and learn about the operations of a company, about growth plans and strategy and developing the talent base. But that can be very difficult to tie yourself into when you're not necessarily seeing what that future might look like for you, or if you're someone who feels maybe like they're the lone wolf in RM, kind of floating about their organization. So generally speaking, from an overall profession standpoint, it's very, very encouraging to hear a bit more formality, and to your point, not formality just for the sake of having formality, but
Yeah,
for the sake
right.
of developing people, right? And giving them the right learning opportunities and milestone markers maybe in their career so that they can achieve their own aspirations in line with what the firm needs and the organizational needs for their own growth plan. So it's kind of interesting, and that's got me thinking along the lines of some of the items that you touched upon earlier related to within your own experience, you've certainly had the opportunity to engage with different parts of the organization. It sounds like, IT, there's other operational functions certainly. How do you how do you match that up then with what you're doing today? Do you see that as wasted effort? Was that something that helps you? Is it just kind of, hey, that was another part of my career, and now I'm in this new era, so to speak? So what I'm curious your standpoint there.
No, I think it absolutely, it's definitely not wasted effort. I think any time you have ability to add skills to your, not just your resume, but just your kind of your tool bag of skills or whatever, I think is value add. And so I, it's hard to think of just instances of where I use what I've needed or done when I was our de facto IT function, but um, I think it's valuable. And I think the stuff I was doing as when I kind of overlap more with the sales function or more with the consultant side, or when I was a consultant at Embark, I think that adds a ton of value on the RM side. I think or in any function, I think the more you have a full picture of how your firm operates or how the company operates, all that goes into it, I think you're much better off. And I think RM naturally is seated in a place where you do get to see that anyway, especially if you're involved in kind of enterprise applications, and so that's your IT side. You're getting to understand how data is flowing through systems and how it affects other functions within the firm. From the sales side, you're getting to kind of see how the sausage is made on onboarding clients. You're getting to live in the trenches a little bit as sales reps are trying to go out and hunt, and you're out there with them trying to help them win it by pitching the best resources possible. I think you get a taste of that sales side, but you don't have to live on the on eat what you kill type mentality either, but you get a taste of it. And then you get to the taste of leadership. And when you're saying, hey, we're reporting on from a professional services side, hours is dollars. And so we're reporting on hours. Like this is trends for hours. This is what we are forecasting hours based on schedule. And so um, we just sit in the middle of a lot. And so I think any insights you get or any ability to touch other pieces of the company, I think is incredibly valuable. And so yeah, that's my opinion there.
That's fantastic, and I would translate that into advice for folks that are starting out, maybe within the RM space or are starting to dabble in a career within this industry because I could not agree more with that perspective and really regardless of industry, having a understanding of the broader organization. And if you are staffing and interacting and engaging with people that have their own career aspirations and need to be going out and working potentially even with external clients, having that ability to really understand what they're dealing with on a day in and day out basis, but then tie that into the strategy of the organization long term. How could that not help, right? So I think that was a really great and probably one of the best explanations I've heard thus far in terms of the varied projects and initiatives that resource management gets involved with, because truly no day is the same. There is a dynamic nature to being in this field that for those that enjoy it is, I'm going to guess, what keeps us involved and
Yeah.
keeps us, passionate about it. So I would say I heard a couple of things I'd like to recap in terms of the advice and really critical success factors for being within this space. One is certainly speaking up for yourself, as we talked about, advocating for that career path and having that willingness to create your own opportunity while also being flexible, being open-minded, because
Yeah.
as we've just described, resource management is it takes a winding road sometimes, and being okay with that. I loved, Casey, you talked about building relational equity. Can you talk about that a little bit more and give us some perspective on what that means and why is that important?
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. And I think that goes back into the just understanding what other functions are doing too. I think it's kind of both. It's so uh, getting in the trenches, doing what needs to be done, that helps build that equity and saying like, hey, they're willing to do whatever it takes to get things done, get things staffed, get projects started and kicked off. That's awesome. That's great. I think also understanding and having a level of empathy for what these other functions are doing. So I've encouraged my entire team to sit on sales calls with sales reps and understand what goes into that and how difficult it is. And whenever we're getting tension or friction from these sales folks, we're all on the same team. It's not because they have a vendetta against us or they're just trying to win. Like they want to win. And it's same with the consultants. Like these are people who are trying to build careers and they want to do certain things. And the more we can understand that, the more we can help them get there. And that only benefits the firm, that benefits them, that benefits the resource management function because you have the right people in the right seats doing the work they want to do. And kind of our firm's aspect is you take really good care of your people and they'll take care of clients. And so we try to do that at our whatever level we can on the RM side. So it's not always perfect. We don't always have the best answer for salespeople or consultants or leadership to say, but as long as they know that you care and you want the best for them, um, we've seen that work well. And so to that end too, we try to be more than just messages on, we use Slack messages or emails or whatever. We try to get in front of all of our we are a centralized function here in the Dallas office, but we try to get in front of all of our markets and have good conversations and talk about what consultants want to do with their career and how can we help do that. And so I think it's kind of a two-part, like getting dirty and doing the dirty work, and then building those relationships outside of, it's a working relationship, but deeper than just a surface level. Here's your project, go do it. We'll see in a month when we have the next one for you. It's the checking in. It's saying like how are things going? Uh, what do you want to do for your next one? We'll do everything we can to make that happen. And so I think the more you can do that and again build that relational equity, the more successful you'll be, the more you'll be seen as a resource and a strategic function where you're saying, hey, we're not just putting matching A and B to make C. We are a relational aspect that it's adding value outside of just the staffing function.
That's exactly right, and really also touches upon not only the perception of resource management, which matters internally,
Yeah.
certainly within an organization, but also the true value that the function brings, and having established those relationships and being able to draw from the learning of what people are sharing gives resource management a very unique perspective on what's going on with the talent of the organization, which ultimately is hugely important and
Yeah.
impacts, of course, client deliverables and retention and even the attraction of talent to the organization. So I agree. I have always felt that resource management does have that unique ability to get involved and engage with many different parts of an organization, but it is up to the resource managers to create that pathway and
Yeah.
ability to connect in that way and bring that value. So I could not agree more that that's fantastic. We are wrapping up. This has been such an amazing conversation. I feel like I've learned quite a bit. I know that our listeners have as well. We've got quite a few takeaways in terms of advice and career perspectives that people can now go explore. So, Casey, thank you so much. We've loved having you. Hope you all enjoyed the episode. Take a look at our upcoming episodes and give us a like and subscribe. Thank you.